What if I told you that video games are actually passing you by like ships in the night, to the point where a pretty prominent person in a studio said that it's like a marketing black hole? Well, today we're going to be talking about the Epic Games Store. Here's a few games: Neo, The End World's With You, Darkest Dungeon 2, Kingdom Hearts Collection. These are in fact games that are out right now. Drop a comment down below. Did you know that the Darkest Dungeon 2 is playable right now? Yes or no?
And has been for about, let me think, about 10 months now. Same with Axiom Verge 2 has been out for a little while. There's just a whole amount of games that are out, sitting in the wild, available to buy, with a couple thousand people having played them and reviewed them. But they're not in the cultural consciousness.
Yep.
No one's thinking about them. No one's aware of them. They're just in this black hole.
Things that go exclusive onto Epic. And they just don't seem to penetrate the culture. And here we have Dave, the CEO of New Blood, who recently said someone once described the Epic Games Store as a, quote, marketing black hole, and it's extremely accurate. There you go. Perhaps you've got that perception where the Epic Games Store is just that launcher where you get a free game every week. And that's just how people use it, and they're not conditioned to checking the store to even see what's going on. Maybe it's just not set up in a way that people readily find games when they happen to use the store. Maybe it's the sort of thing where if a game came out and it was only in Green Man Gaming, because you don't check Green Man Gaming on the regular, you're not going to see it. Meaning that you need to penetrate through with marketing. Marketing that the likes of, say, Darkest Dungeon 2 maybe will not have. And of course, it's very easy to tie this all into the general discourse of Epic having... I mean, their stuff is a lot more functional now, stuff's way better now, but they still do carry the negativity from how initially aggressive they were with a pretty threadbare store that did have problems.
Yeah, I love thinking about it in hindsight, because obviously people were, annoyed about it when it first existed, because it came in and went, okay, exclusivity. And that's a game they're still playing. They're playing it with a lot less, I guess, of negativity to people, because it's less kind of big news ticket items, although Darkest Dungeon 2 is pretty big, considering how massive the first one was for people in like the indie scene and PC and stuff. But there's just something about it is like, despite doing everything that you could, if you follow their logic, you go, okay, well, they did everything roughly right. They got market share through offering free stuff. They got market share in exclusive games through giving them loads of money. So like developers are happy about it. They were slow to implement features. That's probably one of the biggest problems. But like in hindsight, you go, they did everything right, but why is it this? Why does like the Epic Games Store have this just black spot in your brain where you never think about it? You never think about it. You never remember it. Because I even own a handful of games. I own the Saints Row 4 remaster and Tony Hawk's Pro Skater on Epic. Oh yeah, Tony Hawk's on PC as well, but no one thinks about it as a PC game because it's on Epic. It's not on Steam, and because that was Activision's their plan. Can we get the Epic money? And that clearly kind of destroyed that on PC. But even I don't think about that. I bought it again on PS5 because Epic, not even like I have a specific problem with Epic, I don't mind using it. But it's still just, it doesn't exist in my brain. To the point I'm sitting here thinking, like, did Gabe during his time in New Zealand learn some form of ancient tribal magic from over there or something and cast this dark spell across Epic? It feels that way. It's so unnatural. It's so unnatural, and like I imagine there's loads of marketing papers could be written on how badly they've screwed this up.
Yeah, it's fairly interesting. I mean, if I was to weave in a little bit of self-promo, our game, The Pale Beyond, is coming out on Steam. So if you would like a narrative role-playing game, big old survival theme, Antarctic exploration and such, do check out our game on Steam. But the thing there is, Steam like drives traffic. People know about our game because they just wander into it in Steam. I see the statistics when I log into the back end. Steam just always has users. It has so many users. It has a store that's pretty good at surfacing games. And that means that with next to no marketing budget, Steam just ticks away. Which is pretty interesting in a way where I know that if I went onto Epic, there'd be next to nothing probably in terms of traffic. So, is it true that it's a black hole? Does everything there fail? Why is nobody aware of these games? Well, of course, some people are aware of these games. I mean, there's Kenna Bridge of Spirits, got a whole bunch of coverage, but I think most people will know that in relation to PlayStation more than anything else. We've got Rumbleversus being published by Epic Games. That's got glowing praise from streamers and all of that during its recent release.
That's why I didn't see it.
Yeah.
That's
funny.
I saw the release. I saw news. And I was thinking, that's funny. I haven't seen any news about where that is. And that might be why, because it's like, God, well, you learn something new every day, don't you? Jesus.
Yeah, so at the very least, like, while people do see this stuff whenever it is, like, externally marketed to them, there's undoubtedly a perception that it is a bit of a black hole. And there's perhaps a few reasons for this. I mean, number one, less games come out on the Epic Game Store compared to Steam. That just means that Steam is going to be the default place that you go to. It means there's less people just browsing around the Epic Game Store, and of course, the Epic Game Store is not as smart as Steam Store when it comes to its ability to recommend games.
Yeah, I mean, we did that video recently on how the hidden gems thing of Steam 250, and then the interactive recommender of Steam is literally like perfectly designed for the customer to find games that they want to play. And entirely, that's what drives all that traffic. That's what drives, like, hey, you're a little indie, but you've got like interesting tags and some good reviews. Steam will go, oh, you're looking for a niche game? Well, this is a game that 10 other people like you have played and love the shit out of it. So it's like, that's a kind of feature that's like really super means it's like the customer kind of goes first.
Yeah.
But that like gets the small games, even though Steam has no desire for a small game to be sold to you over a big game. It's more about what are you more likely to play.
Yeah,
and if you're likely to play the small game, it'll sell to you.
Yeah, Steam is better at yanking things out of the black hole so that you
Exactly,
actually
yeah.
have a chance that they exist. I mean, if you look at a game that you really like, say you click on Expeditions Rome, and then you take a look at the related games,
Yeah.
there will be games big and small there that you are probably going to be quite interested in.
Mm-hmm.
And I just don't feel like that feedback loop is really there for Epic. Rather, Epic have got almost the opposite feedback loop in terms of their bad rap. Like, they do have a lack of features compared to Steam. I mean, finally they have a shopping cart, so we can get rid of that criticism, but it's not as good, right? There are, of course, people who would boast about, proudly never using that service because they weren't happy about the exclusivity and all of that. Sometimes a bit of misinformation about what the store actually does. Sometimes conspiracy theories about how the developers are taking the exclusivity deals. When at the end of the day, it's almost always just for financial stability, at least for the sake of an indie. And I'll get onto that in a little bit when we talk about your man Gollop and Phoenix Point, which actually is a game I've been enjoying quite a bit. And then even the other side of things, like, let's just say you're a creator and you're thinking about stuff. I mean, a lot of the things on Epic people just like don't really bump into. In a way where Steam, it seems like it can really just help to algorithmically, like, once people start really liking a game, Steam just juices that shit up. And that doesn't really happen with Epic. So I think that there are feedback loops that happen in Steam that are positive that Epic basically doesn't really have. Plus, they're talking about, by 2025, they want to have, they didn't expect to have more than 35% market share by 2024. So that still means that by 2024, I mean, they'll be a big enough fish, but they won't be the big fish. And the comparison to that is Steam, where everybody already is.
Yeah, it's the equivalent of like Epic or like a newbie in the gym. They've been there for 6 months and they're just comparing themselves to the person who's been there for the last 20 years. And is like a pro bodybuilder or something like that. It's a case of they would have to build up to that, and all the feedback loops are against them. Because thinking about the idea of like, you're covering something for as a creator, trying to draw attention to a game. They did have that like creator program on Epic that was basically funneling a lot of money to creators who were in the same way they were giving away free games and stuff. They're just going, yeah, no, here's all the money in the universe if you drive people to our store. But even then you're like, well, creators aren't always interested in purely money. They'll go, well, what's going to have people like in the audience enjoy? Well, Steam games, because they're on Steam. Because if they want 35% of the market share by 2024, what does that mean they're at now? 15, 20? So you're just you're shooting yourself in the foot if you're actually just talking about it whatsoever, or trying to drag people there. They go, I'm not interested. That's that case of like that opening barrage of bad PR is just stuck with them forever.
Yeah,
brutal.
It has. And then what's interesting is the knock-on effects of this. So if you do an incognito mode search for Darkest Dungeon 2, the place where you can buy it is not the first result. The first result is the developer's website. The second result then is actually Epic, so that's good enough. The third one is Steam. Now let's contrast that with Axiom Verge 2, okay? So it came out August 11th on Steam. Now, here's what's quite funny. You have to scroll past the developer's website, Steam page, more search recommendations, 3 YouTube videos, Wikipedia page, Nintendo Switch online store page, and then you find the Epic Games Store page. Even though that game had a year of exclusivity, which, I mean, you would have thought that would really drive more SEO to the Epic page, but it didn't. So basically, there's this pretty damn large bonus for Steam, and it's harder to get Epic stuff covered.
Yeah.
It very much seems, to the point where, at the very top, described as a marketing black hole.
Yeah, I want to look at the specific, that Darkest Dungeon 2 example is really interesting to me, because say you're looking for, say you're in a bit of a rush and you just want to click, you're not kind of looking at every element on the page. You'll see Darkest Dungeon 2, Red Hook, oh, well, I want to buy it. You're not going to see, oh, Epic Games, and then see Steam, because you look at search results as an amalgam. You'll see Epic Games and Steam, and even looking at pure market share, even without like having to think intuitively, people are going to click the Steam one. And then they're going to see Dark Dungeon 2, Steam, click, oh, it's not out yet. Because if they're like, maybe they're kind of looking around, but you can see people maybe not look over at the initial release date, 2021, maybe not see any of the questions going, is it out yet? And click those. They'll just go, Darkest Dungeon 2, Steam. Oh, it's not out. I guess I'll come back when it is. And that's that thing of like, that massive bias towards Steam is just going to mean you'll just ignore information, because that's kind of that's what you do, because you'll want to buy it on Steam.
Yeah, so I think basically it means the Epic Games Store is good if there is an audience that already really knows about your game.
Yeah, like Hades did pretty well there.
Yeah, like that's where it will work, because your super fans are just going to follow the game.
Yep.
If you have a marketing budget, you'll be able to get around that, because you can inform people that the game is out and this is where you get it. But for some of that, just, hey, this platform has a lot of users, it has search, it has recommendations, this will help you. Those things not existing clearly just means that like something goes onto the store, it's went into the black hole, you have to somehow jump in and fetch it, whereas Steam will constantly be trying to surface stuff for you in a way that is just fundamentally different. Yeah. Now, that said, on Epic, there are pros. The other side of it. So it's time to talk about Julian Gollop, who is the original creator of XCOM. And of course, the spiritual successor game that he has been making along with his team is Phoenix Point. It's a game that had, I think, a few more issues at launch, and there was a lot of drama around its exclusivity at the time. I remember covering it. But certainly, I own it in Steam, and I am finding it really, really enjoyable. And maybe some of the reason why I've been finding it enjoyable is coming down to what he's been able to say here. He basically said, when we did it, there was a lot of hostility, conspiracy theories, the whole spyware and all of that. That settled down, and Epic has been great for many indies, in fact. It was another avenue to get funding, of course, which is very, very difficult to get with an indie studio. That's absolutely true. It's because it's not just the money. It's the security, and once you have the security, then you're able to plan. And when you can plan, then you're not chasing the next funding goal, you're actually doing what makes sense for your business and your games. That is a massive game changer, and it's something that actually holds up a lot of indies who just kind of go from, like small indies, who just try to go from like funding pot to funding pot to funding pot, making little prototypes for things here and there, but never actually going to a full release. So that amount of security is the awesome thing. He said, overall, it was very positive for Phoenix Point itself. We had extra money that could go into making the game, which we didn't have otherwise. So it really did help the quality of the game itself, helped us get released sooner rather than later, and enabled us to put more content in. So it was good. Basically, it's that risk mitigation and the ability to plan. And for them, that meant that by the end of the exclusivity deal, they were able to make good on it, saying it's always better to have the widest access to storefronts as possible, but that because money is, usually not an easy thing, sometimes you do have to look at other ways to get the funding. Now, of course, this is a game that then came out, and basically the way they described it was Epic Games Store was like a secure test launch before the real launch, where Steam is considered as the real launch, which I'm sure feels good to Epic, who, just give all the money to them, and then for most people it just means the version they buy in Steam is better.
That was part of their strategy, and they're hoping for we'll do this enough, and then there'll be enough people there, it'll buy us like the time. So we are throwing money into the abyss to get some market share, but it will slowly build and it will compound. which was their goal, but it seems like they have a substantially harder time than they expected.
Yeah, like as Julian put it, when it came to the Steam release in 2020, we had a much nicer, much better tutorial in place that gave a better introduction to the story, and it was well appreciated by a lot of new players. That's true, and I'd include myself in that cohort of people. Yeah. So it's not the same as in like a Steam early access sort of thing, but like with the Hades situation, it does mean that the game gets extremely developed before it lands in Steam, meaning that when it lands in Steam, well, it's benefited from the continued development that all of that Epic Games money actually made. Oh, sorry, all the development that Epic Games money allowed, instead of it just having to go out, everywhere all at once. Which might not be ideal if you just want to access the game the same time it comes out somewhere else in Steam, but it's interesting for them as a business, the way that they can almost treat Steam as a kind of a second launch, which I suppose ultimately for Phoenix Point has helped it become a better game. Because certainly if they launched and it was rife with issues in Steam, I mean, imagine the amount of negative reviews they would rack up and how long it would take them to claw back their situation. Because if something goes from like extremely positive to mostly positive to mixed, like the difference between mostly positive and mixed, or very positive and mostly positive, like that will change the conversion rate of a user landing in your store. And that is so massive to the amount of money that you're able to bring in.
Yeah, it's like every extra percentage above a certain point of review is just like because of distribution of points as how reviews should work. As soon as you see an overwhelmingly positive or like a 90, you're like, oh, hang on a second. Or you look at an 88 and go, it's pretty good, but not stellar. But I think it's so interesting to me that like the Epic method of early access technically kind of works okay because you've got your dedicated players coming over. And they'll provide like the best feedback. I mean, I'm definitely really guilty of this a lot of the time where I'll play an early access game, have a load of thoughts about it, and then never communicate those to the developer. Because it's like, well, that's like a whole active process of becoming part of development. And some people are kind of in there for just playing the game early. So it's that kind of thing where it works really well, and Epic are just footing the bill for, and intentionally footing the bill for a lot of just Steam, a better launch on Steam, and more development time, which is, it must be frustrating for them to look at that and see it happening and not know how to get around it. But I think the answer probably is just the grind. Keep doing this until one day it's not quite as strong, and pray that Steam fucks up someday. I think that's one of the problems they have to overcome is like, how do we get better than the best? How do we physically do that?
Work out to get that element of community.
Yeah, because that's the thing where even you look at like how they do reviews, and I was looking at review numbers to see if I could maybe get like a decent picture of how many people are using the store for games like that. It's like Darkest Dungeon has almost
4,700.
Was it 4,700? Was it almost 11,000? I thought. Maybe I looked at the wrong number. I thought it was like 11.
It says 5,700 votes, 4.7.
I was looking at a different game then. But yeah, that's like 5,000. So if you looked at the Steam review comparison, you would say, oh, that's actually quite a lot. Because you're looking at what Steam's by say 8 to 50 is the range of multiplication, depending on how much for review. But then you think those reviews aren't the same as Steam reviews. They're star ratings. And I think people are substantially handier to give something a star rating than review a game on Steam, because the prompt for text and the whole like culture around review properly and like write funny reviews and stuff means you probably have a smaller conversion rate, or sorry, a higher conversion rate of game sale to review.
Yeah.
Which means it's probably not doing terribly, but it's definitely not doing extremely well.
And for that developer, that might be fine, because maybe they just want to say, hey, when this actually does come out on Steam, it'll be Game of the Year. It'll be that good.
Yeah.
Because we had a whole bunch of money to do it right, and the super fans who followed us over to Epic. I mean, there's some people who would rather be there in a Steam early access situation, but ultimately that's the situation that we're at. There's a few people in the industry calling Epic a bit of a black hole for marketing, so that's like in a way your trade-off. If you have fans that you can take with you, or a marketing budget to let people know about the game, then I think Epic is a good bit more de-risked, and you can benefit from the money that is going to come from that if you're able to land a deal. But man, discoverability does suffer, and discoverability is the superpower of Steam compared to the other storefronts.
Yeah, it's just, the entire thing is just Epic taking hits on the chin and paying for it until something happens, which is, fair play to them. I almost kind of hope it works out for them well in the end, because you have to respect their moxie to keep going.
Yeah, and hey, like if maybe Steam ends up reducing its cut, Maybe it forces Steam to take their interactive recommender thing out of labs and into the Steam. Like, you know, maybe basically, if Epic does well, it's more competition. That is actually a good thing for us. So that's basically the situation. I guess this idea of the Epic Store being a marketing black hole, does that resonate with your experience as a customer, right, in this industry? It does for mine, for whatever reason.
Yeah.
I mean, we're just used to checking Steam.
Yeah,
like, even that's just some of it. I've been doing it. Like, I remember installing Steam with Half-Life 2.
Back in the day.
Back in the day.
Back when it was it was like an olive drab green nightmare of a program.
It did look pretty disgusting. Yeah. So,
but then, what didn't?
True.
What didn't in the early 2000s online? I've seen people compare, like, on Twitter, bringing, like, screenshots of MSN Messenger and, like, putting up beside Discord saying, where did it all go wrong? You're like, I understand the sentiment and the nostalgia, but Jesus Christ, that thing was an awful looking piece of shit.
Yeah. So look, there we go. That's the situation. Does this resonate with you? Right? Have you learned anything new today? Like Darkest Dungeon 2. I just think that's a good example because it is a massive game, so I know lots of people will know it, but I'm just wondering, are there people who just completely missed it by? So let me know, but that's it from us. See you next time.